Welcome everybody to one of the final sessions here at PDC. My session enabling test automation using Windows Server 2008 Hyper-V. I'll give people a second to get settled. So my name is Taylor Brown. I'm a test lead on the Windows Core virtual machine team in the Core OS division. I've been testing at Microsoft for about 7 years now, so most of my career has been in test, and most of my career has been on the virtualization team. I've worked on the team since Virtual PC about 5 years ago. So what we're going to talk about today is we're going to go over a high-level overview of Hyper-V virtual machines. We're going to talk about some of the key test dev features of Windows Server 2008 Hyper-V. And we're going to talk a little bit about System Center Virtual Machine Manager. And then we're going to talk about the new test dev features specific to Windows Server 2008 R2, Windows 7 Server Hyper-V. So with that, so what are virtual machines for those of you who don't know? Virtual machines allow you to run multiple isolated operating systems on the same physical computer at the same time. So you can switch in between the different virtual machines. They can be running different operating systems. They can be running the same operating system. They're isolated from each other. They don't know that they're a virtual machine. You can run legacy applications. You can do support, or in this case, we're talking about how you can use them to enhance quality assurance or test processes. Some examples of virtual machines that are out there, Hyper-V obviously, Virtual PC, which was the first virtualization solution that Microsoft shipped, Virtual Server, which was the second one, VMware, which is kind of the market leader right now, Parallels, for those of you who are Apple users, and then Zen, which is a fairly new open source virtualization platform. So what are some of the key test dev features in Hyper-V? Why should you want to use Hyper-V as a developer or a tester? So we support multiple processors now. So this is something new from Virtual Server or Virtual PC. We support up to four processors. We support up to 64 gigs of memory per virtual machine. So the old 4 gig limit is gone. We support 64-bit virtual machines. So you can now do 32 or 64-bit testing. We support up to 12 total network adapters, 8 synthetic and 4 emulated. And we'll talk a little bit about what the differences there are. We've got some flexible networking options like VLANs. Multiple storage adapters, so you can get 4 SCSI adapters, 64 disks per SCSI adapter, plus 4 for the IDE. So you can get a lot of storage on there. We now support loopback mounting of VHDs. This was something that Virtual Server 2005 R2 SP1 started to introduce, but it's now fully supported in Hyper-V as well. And we have a full WMI scripting model. So all of the stuff that you can do through the UI, you can do programmatically as well. So with that, I'm going to switch over and go through a demo of some of these features. So this is Windows Server 2008, shipped last year. Hyper-V shipped in June. It was an update to this, so this is all available now, everything on this machine. So let's go just through creation of a virtual machine real quick. So we'll just create a new virtual machine. We'll call it demo. We can assign how much memory we want it to have, so we'll just leave it at 512. We can set what network connection we want it to be connected to. And on this computer, I've got an internal and an external network created, so I can choose which one of those I want. We'll leave it not connected. I can create a virtual hard disk, or I can have it use an existing virtual hard disk that I've already created. Or I can say, no, I don't want to use any hard disk at all. I'll attach one later. And with that, we'll hit finish, and it'll create this virtual machine. So let's go look in the settings and see what other kind of options we have. So in the Hyper-V settings, we've got some options for how we want it to boot. Just like a physical machine, we can choose whether we want it to boot from networking or CD or whatnot. We can set how much memory we have. So this is where we can set up to 64 gigs if your physical server has it. In this case, this machine only has 4 gigs of memory, so that's the maximum we could set it for. This is where you can configure the number of processors. So 1, 2, or 4 virtual processors. And then we can go through and add hard drives to our IDE controllers. We can set the networking options, all of those things through the settings. So I'll show you kind of some of the great uses for virtual machines just in and of themselves. So I've got a Server 2008 core Japanese virtual machine running. And if I'm doing localization testing, I can have at the same time just a Server 2008 standard virtual machine running. So I can run these side by side, and I can compare the UI between the two and figure out what options I'm looking at. So I can open the same control panel and figure out that this drop-down is the current format. This drop-down here is the current format as well. So just in and of itself, that alone is a pretty handy test feature. I'm going to go ahead and turn this virtual machine off. So let's take a look at a script. I'll start up this Windows 7 virtual machine. So with Server 2008 RTM, we do support running Windows 7 virtual machines for test dev. So if you're in a rush to get back and start playing with your Windows 7 bits that you got today, you can install those and use those on Server 2008. And they have full integration component support. So you've got the full keyboard and mouse integration. So I've got a script here, and don't worry about trying to copy all these down. I've got them all on my blog, and I'm also going to post them up with the content of this talk, so they're all available. This is PowerShell. Yep. All the scripts I'm going to show today are going to be in PowerShell. You can do any of this in C#, PowerShell, VBScript, JavaScript, all of that. And it's all up on MSDN as well in both C# and VBScript. So what this script does is it just looks for this Vista virtual machine, and it actually saves off a thumbnail image of the virtual machine. So since we have Windows 7 client running, I'll just take that one's name instead, paste it in here, and run this script. And if we go take a look in this C:thumbnails directory, what we have is a screen capture of that virtual machine running. And I set it for 640 by 480, but you can take a screen capture at 1024 by 768, 20, whatever you want, whatever resolution you want. So when you're running tests inside of virtual machines, instead of just getting a log of the test that's running, now you can actually get the video output from that virtual machine. So when you're trying to figure out why something failed or what happened, you can actually look at a video and say, okay, I see that this pop-up came up or whatnot. And we use that in our automation quite a bit. I'm going to delete these thumbnails. And we'll take a look at import-export and snapshots, which is kind of another key test dev feature. So I've got a virtual machine that I created, Windows XP, and I've got a snapshot tree. So some of you may be familiar with snapshots from VMware or undo disks with Virtual PC. So this is Hyper-V's snapshot system. So I'm going to turn this VM off, and I'll restore this VM. So this is Windows XP RTM 2600, just vanilla, no updates installed, nothing. So we can see we've got all that's there. Great. I can turn off this virtual machine. And I can go say, all right, I want to try SP2. I can apply the SP2 snapshot and start the virtual machine up. There we go, we're on XP-SP2. So I can create these whole snapshot trees where they build off of each other, have different branches, different forks. So in this case, I can literally go through and do testing on RTM, Service Pack 1, Service Pack 2, Service Pack 3. I can do testing with going through the 1, 2, 3 upgrades, or I can say, no, I only want to do 2 to 3. I can test any of those type of scenarios I want. And in this case, creating this tree, I started it at 12:44, like noon. Creating the last one was at 6:15. So if you were trying to do this manually, you're looking at 6 hours to create that kind of a tree. And once you've created this tree, you can export it. So let me just turn off this VM. Right-click, export. You can export it to a folder. I've already pre-exported this. And then you can import it. So I'll just import and And I've already got a copy of this on my C drive. So select the VM, import. It'll take a second to finish the import here. And what I'll have is I'll have another exact copy of that virtual machine. There we go. So once you have one person in your office or one person create this snapshot hierarchy, you can have many people share it. You don't have to go through the same thing over and over again. And you can do this many times. So I've got another script, call this clone, and this just uses that import-export functionality to clone a virtual machine. So it's going to clone this demo virtual machine, and it's going to clone it. In this case, I think I set it for 5 times. Okay? So we've got that VM that we created earlier, demo. We'll run this. And if we go look, we're now making 5 copies of that virtual machine. So if you're in a scenario where you're trying to do some web testing, some workload testing, you're trying to stress out a website, you can create drones to go nail that website instantly. Just copy, just clone them. And you can make as many as you want, pretty much instantly. So go back over to the slide deck. So and this is a little bit about snapshots. We've already talked about this. So we allow creation of snapshot trees. We can quickly use that to revert back and forth between a previous snapshot and what we're currently doing, like an undo disk. We support trees up to 50 deep. I usually try to keep them around 10 or 15, because every time you add a snapshot, there's a little bit of a performance hit. It's a couple percent, but if you get into a tree of 50, that couple percent starts getting up there. I already did the demo for that. Skip over. Okay, so integration components. So integration components, some of you may be familiar with virtual machine editions from Virtual PC or Virtual Server, or VMware has the VMware editions. I don't remember what they call them, but we have integration components. And basically what these are is a set of drivers and services that run inside the virtual machine that allow us to do things like have the mouse not get captured by the virtual machine. They enlighten the virtual machine to know about mouse actions or video actions or networking. They provide much better performance. So in Virtual PC, you'd see dramatic performance improvements. In Hyper-V, our CPU access is much faster, so the improvements aren't as dramatic, but they still help performance quite a bit. And we also have some Windows services that allow us to do things like shut down the virtual machine cleanly, heartbeat, time synchronization, backup, and then key value pair exchange, which we'll talk a little bit about in a minute. They're installed using an ISO that's preloaded on the machine, VM guest ISO. Except for Windows Server 2008, where they're in box. You have to install the Hyper-V update, but they're in box. And in R2, Windows 7, they're in box as well. And let's take a look at the integration components. Back over to my machine here. So get rid of these VMs. Give us a little more room. So we'll start up this Vista virtual machine. Connect onto it. The hard drive on this machine is a little bit slow, so it takes a little while to restore some of these VMs. Are you running on a laptop? I'm not running on a laptop. I'm running on a HP, just HP General Workstation. But hard drive access is still a little slow on this machine for some reason. I don't know. So this is a Vista virtual machine. And if we go look at Device Manager, and we look at something like the network adapter, we'll see that we've got this Intel 21140 based PCI fast Ethernet adapter. So this is one of our emulated devices. This is something that we've actually taken a real reference hardware and we've emulated it exactly as it is. And we still provide that functionality for operating systems that don't have enlightenments for them, or for network boot and those kind of situations. In this case, I've just opted not to add a synthetic one to this virtual machine for the sake of the demo. But if I go look at the display adapter, I see one of the new synthetic devices. So this is a Microsoft Virtual Machine Bus video device. There's no hardware that represents this in the world. It's completely a synthetic device. We've made it up. And we enumerate these off of a new bus called VM bus. So instead of PCI bus, we now have VM bus. So these are some of the drivers that we have. We also have a number of services. So if I go look in like Task Manager under Services, I will see all these VM, IC, VSS, VM, IC time sync, heartbeat, whatnot. If I go look in Device Manager, again, they show up in Device Manager as well. So under System Devices, so like here's the heartbeat integration component. And if I look at the UI for Hyper-V, I can see, if I can get this out of the way enough, that on this Vista virtual machine, it's hidden off the screen with a high DPI, but it'll actually say in the corner that it's got a heartbeat, that it's heartbeating okay. And if I went and disabled the heartbeat service, it would stop heartbeating. So it's just a message that gets thrown across the wall every now and then to say, I'm alive, I'm happy. The integration component that's probably the most useful for testing is this KVP integration component. It allows us to set some information in the guest and or retrieve information set by the guest from the host, from the parent. So we can exchange strings, we can exchange these kind of things through registry and WMI. So let's take a look at kind of how that works. We'll start off with a set of integration components that we've preset. These are we call them intrinsic KVPs. So let me run my, which one is it? It's the guest intrinsic KVP. So these are the guest intrinsic KVPs that we've pre-populated for you. So we get things like the name of the virtual machine, the operating system it's running, the version of the operating system, what service pack, these kind of things. So just with the name alone, we can now do something like run or execute a remote command with like psexec or some other remote command. So in this case, like this VM has an auto-created name, so it booted through sysprep, got an auto-assigned name. Now I can start running code against it. There's also non-intrinsic KVPs. So if I go into this virtual machine and I open regedit, we've got this section of the registry. This is the virtual machine guest section. And if I set a key in here, let's run a script that does a reg add and refresh. There it is. So I've set a value of testing. And if I go back over to the host on PowerShell and I say get guest KVP, oh, my script didn't work. Try it one more time. I bet I have the wrong guest name. Yes. Let's try Vista. Oh, you're right, I am. Get guest KVP. There we go. So let's try Vista. Thank you. And there we go. So testing. So we've just shown how we can now push this information from a guest to the host without networking or without any other kind of connectivity. So if you've got something where you want to do some isolated testing, you can push these strings back and forth. Well, let's show the push side of it too. So let me go find my set guest script. So there we go. Let's get set. There we go. Now let's fix the VM name again. So I'm just going to set a value of web address and www.google.com. Why not? Probably should have been live. So, okay, that ran. And let's go take a look in that VM. If I go look at, there we go, web address. So www.google.com. So I can use this to push some command into the guest, have it run it, and then use it to query the result of that command back from the guest. In fact, let's take a look at what that would look like. I think I've got, I need to switch back over to my Windows 7 virtual machine. Now I have to wait for this guy to boot up real quick. So we've actually got an int-in script that'll run through and actually show this testing in action. This is how we do our testing on the Hyper-V team. We start up a virtual machine, we take a snapshot of it. Then we run a test inside of it. revert the snapshot, run another test inside of it, revert the snapshot, run another test inside of it, revert the snapshot, over and over and over again. Each time we're getting to run that test in a clean environment because we've reverted the snapshot. And it's pretty much instant. There's no sysprep time, there's no guest boot time, it's just run the test, revert, run the next test. So if you're doing something like a BVT test, where you might want to check every check-in, you might want to test to see if it at least installs and does some basic functionality. You can put this at the end of your build script and have it run pretty much instantly on every check-in, or at least very quickly. So we've got our virtual machine up here. So let me start a script. And all this script is doing is just looking at that registry key, waiting for that registry key to get populated. When that registry key gets populated, it says, OK, I should go do this thing. So got automation. So it's just waiting for a registry key to get populated. And if I come back over here and I run my end-to-end script, so it's going to go create a snapshot of this VM real quick. Try to move this out of the way, see what's going on. So it's creating a snapshot of this VM there. And then once it's created the snapshot, it's going to write a KVP for the guest. And the guest should pick this KVP up. There it goes. Just ran and did a website. Took a screen capture of that website, reverted. Starts back up again. Writes another KVP for the guest. Guest picks it up, opens another website, revert, and so on. So this will just go on for, I think I gave it 5 websites to go to. And what I also had to do was take a thumbnail each time. So we took one of Microsoft.com. That was the first website I told it to go to. And didn't quite get a chance to finish opening up. So I could actually go adjust my script now and say I need to give it a little more time. Second one, same thing, need a little more time. So, and it actually went and did, it's going to do 5 websites. So each one of those happens in a clean environment, though. So if I've got something like something I'm installing that could be disruptive, or if I want to make sure that I'm not getting a false positive because I installed A and then B was broken, but it already installed A, so it was okay, I can now have this just revert every time. And we run about 40,000 tests every day using this methodology in the Hyper-V lab. On every single build that we produce, we run about 40,000 tests using the same system. So it's pretty reliable. It works very well. It's pretty easy to set up. If you use a PowerShell wrapper, it's about 20 lines of code to do something like that. So.
Do you have any way of pushing a notification across between virtual instead of polling?
Let's take questions at the end so I can get it on the audio. But yeah, certainly ask that question at the end so we can get it on the audio. So I want to talk a little bit about System Center Virtual Machine Manager. So this is really our premium management client. As MSDN subscribers, you're going to get it for free anyway. And my point here is actually that it's not just something for like the IT guys. This is actually a pretty useful tool for developers in their office, or especially teams of developers and testers. So it allows us to manage different environments, Hyper-V, virtual server, VMware, ESX. We can do physical to virtual conversions, so you can take a server that you've already got set up, and you can make it into a virtual machine. It's completely automated. They do it all for you. It's like 2 clicks. You can also do virtual to virtual conversions, so you can take a virtual PC or a virtual server or an ESX virtual machine and convert it into a Hyper-V virtual machine. It has a concept of libraries, so you can create a library of virtual machines, a library of templates, and you can deploy those pretty much with 1 click. It's all built on top of PowerShell, and every time you run through a wizard in the UI, you'll actually get a PowerShell script. And I'll show you that in a minute. And there's a web-based self-service portal. So if you've got other people on your team that you want to give access to your server or to a subset of your server, you can give them a website. You don't have to give them admin rights to anything. They can use the website to go create and manage virtual machines. And this is actually in use in production for Microsoft.com, MSDN.com, TechNet, just as a few, just to name a few. So let's take a look at it in action. So this is the System Center Virtual Machine Manager UI. I should note that this just RTM'd last week, the new version of it. This is actually pre-RTM. So, and we can see we've got all the virtual machines that we created. Actually, it remembers these virtual machines I deleted. It doesn't really like that I deleted them behind its back. I can go delete them. I've got the virtual machines that I had running. I can connect to them. I can see their thumbnails. I can do all these kind of things. I can go in and look at the properties of them and change settings and all of the kind of standard things you would expect to be able to do. So I can change hardware. I can take snapshots. They call them checkpoints in System Center Virtual Machine Manager, but it's a snapshot. And I've got this library. So this library has VHDs. It can have scripts. Or in this case, I've got some templates of virtual machines I've already pre-created. And if you've got a sysprepped VHD and you've got it in a template, when you deploy that VHD, it'll actually go through and do the sysprep. It'll answer all the questions, the machine name, whatnot. It'll put in a PID if you give it one, and it'll install the integration components or virtual machine additions for you. So just complete end-to-end automation. In fact, if I go look at this template, I can show you. In OS configuration, I can give it a product key. It'll gray it out so other people can't just steal my product key. I can give it a computer name. I can give it a name for like my name, all those kind of things. And from the self-service portal, this is what the self-service portal looks like. It's just a web app. It looks like OA. Let's load up here. See if I can stop a VM or two. There we go. So I'll just log in with my domain credentials. And this is the web UI. So I can go in and look at a thumbnail view of the virtual machines. In this case, they're both stopped, but I can connect to them. If they were running, I'd be able to do interaction with them over the web. I can create a new computer using a template. We also have a concept of quota points. So you can say user A only has 5 points, and each virtual machine is going to cost them 1 point. So they'll only be able to create 5 virtual machines. They can't overload your server. So if you've got like 3 or 4 servers and you want to give a whole bunch of people access to them, this is a pretty good way to do it. And again, when you go through a wizard, so if I go create a new virtual machine, if I say, yeah, use that one, call it whatever. At the end of the script, it's got a little vScript button, view the script. There's the PowerShell that it's going to create to go do that operation for you. So if you're not a scripter or you just want to use their script, you just copy it, change a couple names, and you can do whatever you want with it. And this all calls System Center, so it's not the native Hyper-V PowerShell, but it's System Center's PowerShell. So let's get to the fun stuff. What's new? So we now have native VHD integration and boot from VHD, which I think is probably why a number of you are here for boot for VHD. So native VHD we've provided the complete operating system integration for VHDs. So you can now create a VHD from Disk Manager or from Disk Part. You can mount a VHD from Disk Manager or Disk Part. You can do the meta operations from Disk Manager or Disk Part. There's Win32 APIs now, as opposed to just having WMI, which is what we had in Hyper-V. And they're DCOM remotable APIs for disk management. So all the same kind of things you would expect from like VDS or disk management. And we also have boot from VHD. So this is the ability to boot a physical server, physical hardware, laptop, whatever it is, from a VHD file. A couple of caveats. It has to be a Windows 7 VHD. So the actual integration here is in Windows 7, so you can't boot an XP VHD from a physical server. You have to boot a Windows 7 or Server 2008 R2 VHD. You can boot fixed disks, dynamic disks, or differencing disks. So you can actually now go make a differencing disk on your physical server, run something, and revert the differencing disk if you want to. It's a couple reboots to get there, but you can do it. It's not too hard. The whole goal of boot from VHD is that it allows you to have a single image that you can deploy to either a virtual machine or a physical machine. So if you want to go patch the VHD, great. You go patch the VHD, and every new machine that uses that is going to get that patch. And with Windows Server 2008 and Vista, and certainly R2 and Windows 7, we support offline servicing for most updates. So you can go patch that VHD offline on a share, and every new machine is going to get it without ever having to boot it. So having that single VHD is a pretty important benefit. And certainly for test dev, I think that there's a huge value in it. And we'll show that as well. We also have hot out of storage. So you can now add or remove a VHD from a running virtual machine without rebooting it, or a pass-through disk for that matter. So if you have a USB key, you want to expose that to a virtual machine, you can put the USB key in, make sure the disk is offline in Disk Manager, and you can expose it to a virtual machine while it's running, copy some stuff off of it, and dismount it. You do have to have a SCSI controller pre-added to the virtual machine, which you can do through the settings. It's not hard. But the big benefit here is just the ability to move data in and outside of a virtual machine without ever having to reboot it. And especially with native VHD, being able to create a VHD, mount it, copy some stuff onto it, move it to a VM, copy some stuff into the VM. You don't have to have networking. So you can completely isolate these virtual machines now. And let's go take a look at that. So this is my Server 2008 R2, so this is Windows 7 virtual machine. And we've got a couple VMs on here. So let's start out with native VHD. So start this virtual machine up. Connect to it. Starting, where are we at? 70. Again, these machines have a little bit of a slow hard drive. All right, here we go. So here's our Windows 7 VM. And I'm using a VM in this case just mainly for demo purposes. It's really designed for physical booting, but it's just easier to demo these things in a VM. So if I go look in Device Manager, I see I've got two disk drives enumerated. If I look at the settings for the virtual machine, I have only one. I only have this IDE hard drive. And that's what this is. This virtual HD ATA drive, if we view devices by connection, is connected to the PCI bus. So we've got Intel, what is it? There we go. So virtual HD ATA device. So that's my IDE hard drive in this case. And then I've got this Microsoft VHD HBA with a SCSI device on it. If we go look, we'll see this driver is a new driver details. It's called VHD MP. So we've got VHD MP.sys. This is the new boot from VHD driver. If we go look in Server Manager, we can actually see both disks. So we can see our disk 0, which is our physical IDE disk. We've got this little 200 meg partition with no drive letter. And we've got this D partition with about 200 gig partition that's D. And we've got the C drive, which is our boot active crash dump primary partition. So this is the partition we're booted off of. And it's got this new blue icon. This is the new icon that denotes that it's a VHD that's been mounted. In fact, if I right-click on it, I could say detach VHD. Since I'm booted from it, I'll opt not to do that. I don't know if that works or what would happen, but I don't really want to find out. If I go look in Computer, I've got the C drive that I'm booted off of, and I've got this D drive. If I go look in the D drive, there's a VHD. That's the VHD I'm booted from, server and VHD. So I'm literally booted off this VHD. That's what's running. If I run Process Monitor, say OK, pause this. We can see all these read-write files that are all going to that VHD file, server d:/server int VHD. If we look at the stack that created them, there's that VHD dump file. So what's happening is IOs are coming down from your user mode or whatever. They come down the stack. They actually hit kernel mode. Kernel mode goes, OK, I need to write it. They call it VHD dump and say, all right, you're the storage write this thing down. VHD dump goes down, hits into the disk stack and goes, I actually need to have that IDE driver over there write it. It just tells the IDE driver, go write this for me. All the changes go to the VHD. Nothing is actually going to the IDE disk at all. It's all going to the VHD. And it's completely transparent to Windows. It doesn't know anything different. It's just like using iSCSI. In iSCSI, you write something down, and it goes over the network. In this case, we're just putting it into a VHD file. And if I turn this VM off, let it stop, and I go into Disk Manager on the physical machine, you can do action, create VHD. Actually, let's use Hyper-V and we'll create a differencing disk. So I'll create a new hard disk. I'll create a differencing disk, and we'll call it boot, not newt, boot, VHD demo. Okay? And I'll say its parent is that Windows 7 VHD. I think it's this one. Yes. Yeah. And if I go into Device Manager and say right-click, attach VHD, please attach the one that's in C:VH virtual hard disks, VHD demo. Okay. So that's the process of mounting a VHD now, by the way. It's that easy. It mounted it, and it automatically assigned it drive letters E and F. If I go look at those drive letters, there's F. There's that VHD that we were booted off of a few minutes ago. And if we look at E, it shows up as empty, and there are some files in there. So basically the files that are in there is the bootloader, and just enough to get it to the point where it's parsing VHDs, bootloader, the BCD store, those kind of things. And those are hidden files. So that's the process of booting from a VHD. And if I actually go back in here, I can now detach that VHD. And in fact, I can even say, when you're done, just go ahead and delete that VHD. So that's how easy it is to work with VHDs in Disk Manager now. That easy. So let's look at the other feature that we talked about, hot out of storage. So I'll start up this Vista 64 virtual machine. Again, I'll have to wait for it to restore from hard drive. I think next time I will bring my laptop. It's faster. Someone played a trick on me and gave me an IDE drive. There we go. So if we go look at this Vista virtual machine, let's go look at my computer. We just have a single drive, D drive. That's what I'm booted off of. CD-ROM, floppy, whatnot. If I look in Device Manager, I've got standard HD ATA drive, like we talked about earlier. And under storage controllers, I've got two storage controllers. I've got the iSCSI initiator that's there by default, standard iSCSI initiator. And I've got the storage mini port driver. Look at the details of this. It's running store.vsc.sys. So for those of you who've used Hyper-V, this is our storage virtualization driver. This is our synthetic SCSI controller. Okay. If I look in the settings, I've got a SCSI controller with no disks on it right now. Well, let's add a hard drive. So add hard disk. We'll call it a new hard disk. I believe that's what I'm saying. Yep. New hard disk. We'll make a dynamically expanding hard disk. We'll call it hot add demo. You have it 127 gigs? Sure, why not? Finish. So now we've created it. And I'll hit OK. We'll apply the changes. If we look at our virtual machine, speed up PNP detection. There we go. We've got a new hard disk, new virtual SCSI disk got added. We go look in Disk Manager. It's going to ask us to initialize that disk right away because we just added a brand new blank hard disk. There it is. OK. New volume. New format it. Give it a drive letter. All that stuff. There we go. We added a disk to a virtual machine while it's running. Just as easy as just adding it. So, and if we copy files onto it, so if we go, say, copy perf logs, let's find out why a machine's slow. We can copy our perf logs on there. We can go back into settings, back down to that virtual hard disk, hit remove, OK. If we rescan in here, or refresh, that disk is going to go away. Rescan. There it goes. The disk is gone. We can go back over to our host and do the same thing. We can just go all tasks, attach VHD, virtual hard disks, hot add demo. There it is. It's E. It's that fast to mount it. We look in there, there's perf logs. So we can take all this data back and forth without having to use the network. Large or small, doesn't really matter. Cross machine, none of it really matters. It's just move it around. And to actually show what we can do with that, delete this. We've got an end-to-end script that will actually use this functionality. So we've got PowerShell, and let me just open up my end-to-end script. So I've got this end-to-end script. It's going to create a new VHD. It's going to mount the VHD on the host, copy some files onto it. In this case, a test file, unmount it, attach it to the guest, wait for the guest to finish doing something, detach it, mount it back on the host, and display the logs. So got a little script here. Same thing. This just runs and says, hey, when that C:"test thing shows up, run it, whatever it is. So we'll start that, and we'll start end-to-end. And so what this does is it goes and creates a new VHD file, mounts it on the host, and I actually have it mount to a mount point. So it's just a folder on the host. Instead of a drive letter, it'll get a mount point. If we look in Server Manager, there it goes. It's formatting it, coming online. And it'll get a mount point in a second here, formatting. And the reason I use a mount point is just so that I don't have to have a drive letter. I don't have to worry about drive letters being a problem. Like if the machine didn't have, it already had something on D, I don't have to worry about that failing. I just create a folder and give it a mount point, and it just works every time. So it's formatted my volume. So now it's unmounting the VHD. It's already copied some files onto it, that test script. Now it's attaching it to the VM. So we go watch this guy, go up Device Manager, quick rescan. There it showed up. There's the stuff that's on it. This thing's running. It's actually running sysinfo, just for demo, showing, and it's redirecting that off to that folder. So now that it's done, I can say, all right, you're done. Go ahead and remove it. It removes it from the guest. It's already gone. It's already mounted it back on the host. It's going to, again, sign at that mount point. So if we go look in Server Manager, there it is, offline. It's going to online it, mount it, give it the mount point. And there's the log. So that easy. And all these scripts literally took about an hour to write. They're that easy. They just work. So, and I can say, hey, when you're done, go ahead and clean up as well. So it'll clean up, and it can actually turn that virtual machine off and whatnot. So here's some additional references. So my blog, blogs.msdn.com/TaylorB. And as I've told a number of you, as soon as we have some of the directions that we can give you guys for how to do boot from VHD, which hopefully will be very soon, I will post links to it. I will post directions on my blog, as well as I'll get them on the virtualization team blog as well. Other references, Virtual PC guy, Ben Armstrong, for those of you who know him. Howard Ho is one of our test guys. There's a great PowerShell wrapper on Codeplex, PS Hyper-V, and another one just got released last week that's actually fantastic. It's an amazing wrapper on Power GUI from the Power GUI guys. And it'll allow you to do remote credentials, all those kind of things. It's fantastic. And then the MSDN locations as well for all this. So I'm told to remind you guys, please fill out evals. The only way I can learn how to be a better speaker is to hear what I didn't do well this time. So please fill out the evals. And this session is being recorded, and it will be available on MicrosoftPDC.com tomorrow or early next week. With that, let's do some QA. We've got microphones placed around, and I'll try to go around in circles, so start with you. You guys do the...
So the question I have, can you mount one VHD to two separate machines?
You can. The way you do it is you make a differencing disk off that VHD. So you can't have two VMs that are sharing the same VHD at the same time, but you can have a differencing disk off of them.
Okay, thanks.
One of the things we've been doing is we've been implementing some of this test strategy, but one of the biggest issues we're running into is I/O being flooded on the hard drives, especially with a lot of virtual machines running at the same time. The question which we have is, what can we do to improve the performance? We were looking at potentially fiber channel or iSCSI. What do you guys do in order to improve the speed of mounting and dismounting and starting and stopping the VHDs? Because we'd like to scale this up to higher numbers, but you know, conventional serial ATA doesn't seem to have enough oomph in the box, especially if it's been rated.
Yep. So,
in fact, what about RAID? Do you recommend RAID or don't recommend RAID? And
absolutely, RAID is very good. All of my machines in my office, every single one of them is rated. In the lab, when we get into machines that are like 16 logical processors, so we're running like 128 virtual machines on there, we usually have a dedicated either a DAS or a SAN that we're hooking them up to, with anywhere from 20 to 100 drives in order to get the I/O to where we want it to be. So certainly I/O is a consideration when you start getting into running like 10, 20, 30, 40 virtual machines on a server. RAID, SAS, or fiber channel SANs, iSCSI SANs, great. For test dev, I love iSCSI. For test dev, I think it's just fantastic. I can move a whole bunch of VHDs from server to server, from office to office instantly. So that's what we do.
are you running RAID 0 just for striping for speed, or are you also running it for redundancy? And are you using RAID 5, or are you using RAID 0+1? What are you finding is giving you the best performance and the best reliability in terms of getting the best results out of it?
So what we typically do is if we've got a machine that's got 2 or 3 hard drives, we'll stripe them together because we don't care about the data that's on there. It's all in VHDs that we put somewhere else anywhere. So we just don't care at all. We get past 3, we do start doing RAID 5, only because when we start getting into like 20, 30 disks fail, and we don't want to have a machine out for a day because a disk failed. We do RAID 5 then. In production environments, it's almost always RAID 5 or RAID 6. That's what like MSIT and our customers run. So,
thanks.
Yeah.
Do you get a big performance hit running 64-bit guests?
No, it's faster.
Okay, VMware had a lot of issues running 64-bit guests.
Yeah, no, in fact, 64-bit guests are faster than the 32-bit variety. So a 64-bit 2K3 or certainly a 64-bit 2K8 is faster than a 32-bit 2K3 or 2K8 virtual machine for us.
For test dev, is there any kind of guidance available for the configuration of the machine we want to start with, the physical one, in order to do this kind of stuff, and how it would scale? Is there anything online for guidance for just starting out?
You know, there is some guidance. Most of it's around production stuff. I can write up a quick blog post early next week and put it on my blog that's specific to test dev. A lot of it depends. So, I mean, we have people in test dev inside Microsoft, like the Office team or the Exchange team, that are literally buying huge servers now because they can get so many VMs on it. So their actual cost per VM is really low. But primarily, we see people buy like workstation class machines or smaller servers.
I mean, in the general case, I mean, our software is going to be tested on all Microsoft current shipping operating systems for one, and for our web stuff, it'll be at very least a web server database and a client to test against. So if you can keep that in mind when you're writing this up, I'd really appreciate it. Yeah,
I mean, actually, so for like three virtual machine, 4 virtual machine, even as many as 7 or 8, you can get away with a single processor, quad core, with 8 gigs of memory and some decent storage, a couple of SATA disks rated together, and that'll work. If you start getting into a lot of high I/O, like your database is really getting hit, then you're going to want a couple more disks and some more memory, probably. But it doesn't have to be a big server.
Thank you.
Do you have any way of pushing events rather than polling between?
So actually
machines.
having the guest do something based on an event that's going into it.
Yeah, from one side or the other.
We don't have an event into the guest. You have to have the guest waiting for something to occur. There are some different strategies people use, like the events that happen when a hard drive arrives. So they'll run a service that says, okay, register for hard drive or register for registry change notification, those kind of things. But we don't have a hey guest, go do this thing now. In virtual server, for a little while, we had an execute command API that had a little bit of a security hole. So our security guys kind of told us that we should probably take that out. We keep looking at how we could potentially put that in and have it be secure, but there's a lot of challenges around, like, well, what do you run the command as, and how do you get the credentials in there securely, and all those kind of things.
Yeah, this would just be a dev aid tool.
Yeah, certainly. So, I mean, the best thing, the way we do it is we monitor the registry for change notification, or we actually wrote a little tool that uses the name pipe to serial port, and we have, inside the guest, we have a service that's running, listening to the serial port, and we write to the name pipe on the host. That's the other way we can do it.
Oh, okay. Thanks.
I had a question on the snapshots. So are different snapshots stored as differencing disks, or they're different?
Yeah, they're basically differencing disks. They're called AVHDs.
Okay.
It's .avhd, and they are just a differencing disk.
Okay.
In Server 2008 today, we kind of hide them away. We've put them off where the virtual machine configuration is stored. In R2, I think that's going to change. In the bits you guys have, it hasn't yet, but the plan is to actually put those next to the actual VHD that's there, so you can see them.
Yeah, the reason I asked was, like, let's say we have like a starting configuration, and then we distribute it between some test teams or something, and then you make some snapshots. So can we just send those snapshots to the people, or you can't do that? Like, you showed an export option where it exports like the whole tree, but there's no option of exporting individual elements of the tree.
So we don't currently support exporting a single snapshot.
Okay.
Stay tuned.
Okay. And another question was, is there any guidelines on reducing the size of a VHD?
Yeah, so if you want to, with a dynamically expanding VHD, it'll grow as you write stuff to it. If you want to compress it back down again, you want to defragment it and then compact it, compress it. In Hyper-V, we just right-click. There's an option in the Hyper-V manager to say compact disk. It'll actually loop back mount it, do the defrag and the compact for you.
Okay.
So it's pretty easy.
Thank you.
If I start a virtual machine, and then next step is that I want to do an RDP connection to it. When do I know that the machine is ready? Is there something I can listen for or look for?
So we talked a little bit about that heartbeat integration component. So you can programmatically say, you can wait for that heartbeat integration component to start. Once that's started, that means the service is ready. And you can go get the name from that KVP that we talked about, the fully qualified name. So you can pretty much say, start a new VM that I know nothing about, wait for the integration component to start, and use its name.
Cool, thank you.
Do you have a preferred strategy for when you're testing systems like SharePoint or SQL that don't like their name being changed by new SSID, in fact collapse into a pile? Do you just run them as separate tests in isolation, or do you take the template and fully script the install?
We do both, depending on what we're trying to do. Most of the time, it's just, hey, we have this environment, we know that these are the names of it, we push it off to the side, we make a new virtual network that connects it all together. And you can use VLANs to even do that cross-host. So that's probably the most common strategy. But we also do script it a lot of times. So we'll boot it from a sysprep, script it running through one time. And a lot of times what we do is we take that, we give it that new name one time per host, and we keep that VHD off to the side, and we just never, throw it away.
And then difference off it for your test and rollback.
Yeah.
Is there any special tool, say if you've got something that needs multiple servers, like back-end server and a front-end.
Mhm.
Do you just manage that with your PowerShell script, or do you have another mechanism to sort of group, you need to use this collection of VHDs together as your basis to difference off and a given VLAN, obviously?
Yeah, I mean, you have to use a template and kind of have and say, like, this is these all need to be together.
It's down to you to do it.
Yeah, it is down to you to kind of say this is the collection.
Is
yeah.
that going to change with Test Lab?
So that would be something the System Center guys should certainly look into. And they're working a lot with the Visual Studio team and some of these other teams to look at these exact scenarios.
Because Test Lab's effectively a wrapper for all of these things to bring it neatly together, if that's my understanding of it.
Yeah, I mean, it's all part of the Visual Studio team systems and trying to bring all this testing stuff together. Being able to do a deployment. So, I mean, you can actually get it to the point where you can do an F5 in Visual Studio and have that copied into the VM using like the hot add or however you want, and run it in a VM. Go like, okay, cool, and then instead of when you hit stop, instead of it just deleting it, it can revert the snapshot.
Okay.
It can all be done.
Thanks.
Do you have plan to enhance the synthetic video graphics to at least enough to support Aero, or in the future even much more intense graphics?
Yes, that is a plan. I don't think that that's going to happen for R2 probably. About 6 or 8 months ago, we bought a company called Callista. It was a fairly public acquisition, and we're working with them to try to bring some of their technology into Hyper-V when it's ready. So yeah, it's in the plan.
Got a question regarding performance testing. We have in our performance lab bare-bone machines, but this looks excellent to wrap up our performance testing. Can you say any numbers of what's the hit to run it on the VM instead of the bare-bone machines?
So performance hit of overhead of a virtual machine depends a lot on whether it's network or disk or CPU, memory. It depends a lot on kind of what that traffic's doing. So in like I/O, for disk I/O, it's almost native. As long as you have the same number of spindles for the virtual machine as you would when you're comparing it, it's almost native I/O. Networking is a little bit more overhead, because we actually have a switch that we go through, a virtual switch. But I would recommend for performance especially to do a little testing to see what that impact would be in your environment. Or certainly if you have some details of your environment, I can talk to you about that.
So how is, for instance, the Visual Studio team doing when they run performance tests? Are they running it on VMs, or are they running bare-bone machines for their performance tests?
For the Visual Studio, so most of the teams that are doing performance testing, like SQL or Exchange or whatnot, are doing most of their performance testing on physical hardware. Now they're starting to do it on virtual machines. We have our own performance team that only does it on virtual machines. That's all they do is just run web workloads and Exchange workloads and all disk workloads inside virtual machines all day long to look at the performance impact of it. So, yep.
Thank you.
Any other questions? No? Thank you, guys.